Anyway, so Stephen Miller is not to be trusted. He's the one who told these. He said recently that to the ICE agents, he said, "You're an ICE agent. You have immunity while doing your jobs, and so no one can stop you from doing your job. If any officer or any like leftist or any blue city tries to prosecute you from doing your job, they'll be held to account as a felony."
But what we need to reassure, a couple points. To all ICE officers, you have federal immunity in the conduct of your duties. And anybody who lays a hand on you, or tries to stop you, or tries to obstruct you, is committing a felony. You have immunity to perform your duties, and no one, no city official, no state official, no illegal alien, no leftist agitator or domestic insurrectionist can prevent you from fulfilling your legal obligations and duty.
That's what Stephen Miller said. That can't be further from the truth. Like, that is absolutely false accusations. In fact, there have been several ICE agents that actually have gone to jail for violating laws, including state laws. There's an ICE agent right now in jail for violating New York state law. And here is a slideshow that you're watching here of over a dozen ICE agents over the past decade or so who have actually been arrested, indicted, convicted, sentenced, and have served or are serving time in prison, including for federal and state crimes. Then you have the officers that were responsible for Freddie Gray's. You have the officers that are responsible for the killing of George Floyd, Derek Chauvin, and the others that are in jail. There was a goon squad of officers that were going around doing all sorts of like brutish sort of gang-like sort of situations. They all actually pled guilty and went to jail. So there are several examples of officers. Recently, Sonia Massey is a mom who called the police because she thought there was an invasion, and the officer just, I don't know what the hell is wrong with him, trigger happy. She just had a pot of water. Even if she threw the pot of water on him, he was going to survive. He decided the threat of that black woman holding a pot of water and saying something out of rebuke in the name of Jesus, that was threatening enough for him to pull his revolver and shoot her dead. So he's gone to jail. So he was convicted. So immunity, I think not. Breonna Taylor's the officer that killed Breonna Taylor while she was sleeping in jail. So there's lots of examples of actual officers who are more trained than these ICE agents who've gone to jail. So if officers who are committing crimes and found guilty for excessive violence can go to jail, so can ICE agents. And I had this example I said in a recent video. Charles Siringi, 66-year-old, he was fired and he was confessed, and he's going to jail for up to prison to up to a year. So it's very much possible. There was a 1 year in prison for a U.S. border agent accused of ordering women to show their breasts. That was this year. So another ICE agent. Indeed, there are ICE agents who have actually gone to jail for that. Stephen Miller is incorrect. And Stephen Miller is also wrong because Stephen Miller often says stuff in social media, shows that he has no clue how the law works. And he gets the administration in trouble. During Donald Trump's first term, when Donald Trump's lawyers were arguing that the reason why they had a Muslim ban was for safety reasons, Stephen Miller was out in front saying, no, we don't want any Muslims. So, of course, the organizations that are suing the Trump administration against that ban quickly just put Stephen Miller's statements on the record, and he lost the case because Stephen Miller was out and about saying the wrong thing. Like I said, with the migrant kids, Stephen Miller was saying, no, the parents wanted the kids to go back. Stephen Miller actually said that on the record, like in social media, I think. And that was absolutely not true, which I said, is there coordination? Like, who's running this thing? Stephen Miller also told Donald Trump in an overall meeting with Bukele, who's the president of El Salvador, that the Supreme Court justices, all 9, had ruled in their favor. And then he was saying these things in this meeting at the Oval Office, but so definitively, like, yeah, they said no one is in charge, this. And
that he was no longer eligible. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States.
Actually, the opposite of deportation. He was granted a withholding of removal, meaning like he was told that he cannot be deported, at least to El Salvador. Secondly, the portion of the immigration law that withheld Kilmar's removal also gave him the right to work. He got a work permit and continued to work from 2019 until 2025 when he was deported by the Trump administration.
and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation.
There's no way that the 2019 deportation order mentioned Donald Trump's designation of MS-13 because they took place 6 years apart. So
this issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here.
First of all, the reason why they had to return him was because the Department of Justice attorneys told the judge that he was deported in error. So at no point did the judge have to invert anything and discern anything when the DOJ admitted it. And then secondly, they never mentioned the word kidnap. Kidnap is a legal term when you're taking someone without their intent and sending them back to El Salvador. At no point would someone who wants to be in the United States with his wife, stepkid, and child be described as being kidnapped to be returned to a place where he said he had a credible fear.
That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously.
The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 in favor of the immigrant and against the Trump administration. The only part that was against the judge was telling the judge that she couldn't specifically tell them what time and how to bring him back. But they did affirm that she was right in ordering him and ordering the Trump administration to return him. They just said she couldn't specify its precise time. So that's a blatant mischaracterization of what the court said.
Stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which is,
The Supreme Court did not mention the Secretary of State, neither did it mention the President. It just mentioned the executive generally. Secondly, he calls this man an MS-13 for 6 or 7 years. The government has not proven one bit that he's a member of MS-13. In fact, the Department of Justice lawyer was fired because he refused to argue that he was a member of MS-13 because he says there's no facts to back that up. There's nothing. I'm not going to go to court and say something without any proof. So he said, I have my integrity. Unless there's proof of that, I'm not saying that. And they have yet to say that. In fact, I argued before, when the immigrant Kilmar Brego Garcia went to the El Salvador prison in Sicat, the senior prison guard separating the gang members based on their tattoos looked at Kilmar and based on his determined that he was not a gang, so he was in a cell with non-gang members. So if anything, that's proof there that he's not MS-13, but yet anyone who keeps repeating that he's MS-13, including Stephen Miller, essentially is setting themselves up for a defamation lawsuit, because that's to be characterized as a member of a dangerous, murderous gang when you're not, which can impugn your character, is defamation. And so Stephen Miller, at minimum, should be on hook, as well as Trish McLaughlin, Christy Noman, everyone who's ever called that man a MS-13 gang member without qualification that they are alleging it and without facts.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
any
Court's
help to get him
asking
back?
to.
And
that-
what was the ruling
that your
in
position?
the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here.
Again, the decision was not in favor of the Trump administration, as Stephen Miller said in that Oval Office meeting, wrongly and incorrectly, because he's not a lawyer and he doesn't understand legal arguments, and I don't think he really understood. And then secondly, he said the man is never going to live here and he could be deported again back to El Salvador. And that's not true, because the order that says he can be returned to El Salvador stands. And furthermore, he is currently living here right now. So he was wrong. It was popping off. It was so wrong. And I'm like, there are other lawyers in the room know that he's so wrong. And Donald Trump's like, yeah, that's what I heard. He said there was 9-0. It was not. It was 9-0 the other way. And Stephen Miller had a tweet that says that if you come to the United States, you're not entitled to due process. No, all 9 justices of the Supreme Court says that if you come to the United States and you are not documented, habeas corpus, you have the right to due process rights to defend yourself against it. That is entitled, that's process. What Stephen Miller was like, the only process you're entitled to is a deportation process. No, motherfucker, they have the rights, dumbass. He's so stupid. So Stephen Miller doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's a neo-Nazi. He also, so you get entitled to due process. He was wrong about Kim Brickle. He was wrong about the kids. He was wrong about the saying that they had a Muslim ban because they don't want Muslims in the country. So he's constantly saying stuff in social media that's getting the Department of Justice in trouble because they go against him and they lose because of him. So don't ever take legal advice from Stephen Miller. If he tells you anything, you don't want to trust his ass. Someone tagged me in this video